culture.
I'm going to ask you this question, however, because there are a lot of criticism of the kind of debt distress or debt burden that China is potentially imposing on its African partners. For instance, just earlier this year, according to media reports, there is this port project in BAGAMOYO, which is supposed to have been put on halt by your court or by your president, saying that the Chinese is using exploitive or unfair terms in terms of lending to Tanzania. How do you react to that? I mean, as Chinese, I understand, of course, there are cases, right, where there are companies or there are individuals that are probably not operating on the soundest business terms. But how do you look at these frictions in the relationship between the two sides?
No, we have no frictions.
Not even frictions?
Differences of perception are not differences. So one, I would want to correct your question. You are using an example which is not appropriate in the case of that
because
that chart.
Western media, for instance,
that
Reuters,
is the Western media. You are
because Reuters, for instance, is quoting this as a very important story, talking about the kind of obstacle that
and it's very good you are saying it is Reuters. It's very good you are saying it is Reuters. First of all, this is not the first time China is being accused of such pretentious fabrications. In the 1960s, China was portrayed in the same manner. And it is on 26th of February 1965 in Beijing, where our founding father of the nation, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, told the world, nobody should choose friends for us or enemies for us. China, we have chosen China to be our friend, and time will tell. And indeed, at that time China was not even a member of the UN. And Tanzania is one of those countries which fought hard, campaigned hard in the UN to make sure that China is restored back in the UN and that it regains its seat in the Security Council. So such examples which the Reuters is saying, they do not reflect the unique, special relationship between Tanzania and China. And that relationship, this unique, special, all-weather relationship is guaranteed. Differences of perceptions, difference of opinions in one or two things may happen, but that does not mean Tanzania is taking China as a colonial power. On the question of debt trap, again, it is not true what is being portrayed. Africa has borrowed more from the World Bank. Africa has borrowed more from Europe. And if you look at the aggregate of the loans we have borrowed from World Bank and Europe, they are far more than what we have borrowed from China. But what is important, no country in the world has developed without borrowing. The big powers are borrowing. I want to believe also China is borrowing. What is important, you borrow that money to do and do what? We borrowed from China to build the infrastructure. We borrowed from China to build the hydroelectric power stations, to generate electricity. We borrowed from China to do many other projects. So for me, the perception of Reuters, which wants to believe there's a friction between Tanzania and China, is not only fallacious, but is part of the Western propaganda, which has been there from the 1960s to today. So I wouldn't want to associate myself with such kind of propaganda, not because it is propaganda, but because it wants to deter us and remove us from the focus of enhancing our bilateral cooperation, which, as I said, is unique and all-weather.